From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's Just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
Hello, tipsters.
If you got a tip for Melissa, a mystery you'd like to solve, a cold case you'd like to warm up, how to get driving directions from a 35-year-old millennial who doesn't even know his own address, anything, tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837, or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear your tip on the podcast. Now here's your host. I am the Eggman. They are the Eggmen. She just can't stand the Beatles. Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. And the Beatles are racist.
Okay.
Case in point, Goo Goo Gajoo.
No, it's Goo Goo Gajoob.
It's Goo Goo Gajoo, and they're saying the Jews are babies.
No, it's Goo Goo Gajoob. Joob.
First of all, are you speaking with the ghost of John Lennon?
No, but that's the lyric.
You don't know what they were thinking.
It was... Okay. Hi, everybody.
They're racist. They're anti-Semites.
So we're starting this episode by
Goo Goo Gajoo
in the middle of an argument over a lyric.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, darling. We are recording this on our anniversary.
Yeah, 17 years. They said it wouldn't last. No, it was just me. I was the one that said that. But here we are, 17 years later.
Yes.
In a hotel room overlooking the Newport Bay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not the ocean.
No. It apparently feeds into the ocean. It's ocean adjacent.
Yeah, it actually looks like the Newport Beach mosquito preserve.
That's, I think, the best description. I was thinking I would call it the Newport Marsh, but that's actually too kind.
Yeah.
I think the Newport Bay mosquito preserve.
Yes. That's what it looks like.
We should charge admission.
Right. Perhaps bird sanctuary. Maybe that's what it is.
Nope. I don't even think birds like it there. I haven't seen one goddamn bird.
No seagulls. No.
No.
Not even any vultures.
No.
So.
Turkey buzzards. Right. Not a damn thing. Nothing is living there. Let's just say that.
No. Nothing.
Yeah. We got a good rate, though.
You're right.
Yeah. So I guess I should explain why we're here on our anniversary. So a few weeks ago, I received an email from a amazing kick-ass attorney, Annee, Donna, and she has a practice in Orange County, and she has lived here most of her life. I think all of her life. Sounds like she grew up here, but she has her practice in Laguna Beach, which is, of course, one of our favorite places to be. And she teaches at the University of California Irvine School of Law. And she started 5 years ago the Innocence Rights Orange County. And she was motivated by a particularly difficult case where two young men were given 11 life sentences when no one got hurt. I'm trying to remember the rule of law.
She mentions it during the interview.
I know, and I can't remember what the name of it is, but if you shoot into a car and no one gets hurt but someone's in there, you can be charged with attempted murder, which makes sense. Apparently, these two young men were in a car with other people who were shooting, and 11 people were in the home they shot at, even though these two young men did not shoot the gun. They happened to be in the car, and they were given 11 life sentences. So she's working diligently to try and get them exonerated, and she has made great steps in that. And she, besides her own private practice, she has other irons in the fire, one of them being a case from 1979, a murder case of Joan Virginia Anderson in Fountain Valley, 6 blocks from where Ms. Donna grew up. And she was 17 at the time, and she had a very interesting encounter, which you'll hear about in the podcast. And she is such a force of nature. She got the Orange County District Attorney to open up the case, even though someone was convicted and imprisoned for the crime, and he died of a heart attack in 2013 in prison, completely claiming his innocence the entire time, his family believing him completely, and quite frankly, not quite sure how this happens. I am alternately buoyed and crushed by the judicial system. I am happy when things go the way they should go for someone who has done something very, very wrong. And I am horrified by the number of people that are falsely imprisoned or need cases to be re-examined. It's such an amazing system. And I guess it comes with a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it can be very, very frustrating.
A tightrope. It feels like a tightrope all the time to me. That's why I'm fascinated by it and alternately horrified by it. But she emailed me because back in July we'd covered the case of Patricia Neufeld, who was murdered similarly to Joan Virginia Anderson in 1978, about 6 months apart. So Patricia was murdered 2 days before Thanksgiving, November of 1978, and Joan, I believe, was murdered in May of 1979. Similar MO, similar geography, and potentially a connection to the Golden State Killer. So while Joan Anderson's case was convicted, adjudicated, Patricia's case is still an open case, and her family needs and wants closure, and they deserve that. So Ms. Donna and a group of fantastic law students from University of California, Irvine, get together at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. It seems like they spend a lot of their off time doing research on how to get the information they need on Patricia Neufeld's case to have the Orange County District Attorney take another look and potentially connect it to the Golden State Killer. So I had the opportunity to speak with them yesterday, and we recorded our discussion. And so it's going to be a different version of the podcast, a different kind of episode, but one we're really proud of. And we hope you learn as much as we did. So take a listen. So you're all law students. Does everyone have what you want to specialize in picked out?
Yeah, my name is Fernando, and I've been focusing on a lot of civil rights, excessive force claims against police officers.
Fantastic.
I would love to do that after law school.
Fantastic.
Fernando, I didn't even know that. I have a big case against the city of Anaheim.
Oh, really? I'd be interested.
Look it up. Christopher Eisinger. You can work on that case with me.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's a fun case.
I'm so happy I could be a bridge between. That's,
I'm going to get some free labor.
I'm here.
I'm Corey, and I'm not incredibly positive what I want to do yet, but it's likely going to be civil, so like real estate or environmental or something along those lines.
Fantastic.
And the whole criminal side is my passion project.
Love it. Corey?
I'm a first-year law student, so I've been in law school for like a month, and I'm still trying to figure out how to take notes properly. So no, I don't know what field of law.
That's a perfect place to be. Perfect.
But I did do a year of public interest law last year. I worked at a veterans law firm, handling benefits for them and things like that. And I did a summer at the local courthouse for a judge who exclusively heard criminal cases, so I don't want to do criminal law.
It's good to know what you don't want.
Yes.
You don't know what you want until you know what you don't want.
I'm Evan.
Hi, Evan.
Nice to meet you. And I'm not entirely sure what I want to do yet, but I'm interested in litigation, and I am interested in criminal law, particularly criminal defense, and I'm also interested in civil rights and kind of the Me Too movement as well. I think that could be really exciting to work in, but still kind of undecided right now.
Beautiful. And this is Maddie too, or Madeline?
I'm Madeline.
Madeline.
And I want to be a public defender.
Beautiful.
So yeah, I worked at the public defenders this summer and I loved it. So
wow.
Planning on doing that.
That's amazing. That's God's work right there. Yeah. And besides what you do here, that's also God's work too. That's amazing. That's amazing. So I was fascinated by, I was trying to figure out why this particular case fascinated you, but now I know why, and you said they know, so I can ask you, please tell me what happened when you were 17.
Okay, so, and I really didn't remember a lot of this, which is why I believe Dr. Ford, until my daughter, who goes to USC, was assaulted on the streets of LA and almost dragged into a car. Called me crying, and I was actually on the phone with her when it happened, and I said, I was almost abducted when I was 17. And, my husband had heard the story, but you just don't think about it. I figured I got away. Like, it's no big deal. Stop dwelling on it. And so what had happened was I had worked at Sizzler as a waitress.
Bragger.
I know, in my polyester little outfit. And, back then in 1979, 1980, we walked. It was Fountain Valley. It was a very safe neighborhood.
Absolutely.
And so I would walk over the freeway overpass home and always closed at 11. So I would start walking home about 11:15, 11:30. And as I rounded the corner to my street, which was El Pueblo, I saw a van parked there, and I thought, well, it's a strange place to park a van because there was no house right there. So it wouldn't make sense to park a van on that corner. And so just my instincts, I thought, I'm just going to cross over to the other side of the street, even though I lived on the right-hand side. So I start crossing over. I'm still on the sidewalk, and I see the door to the van is open. There's kind of blue carpet on the bottom. And then I see him, and it's a guy, and this is my little 17-year-old brain. I thought it was weird, but this is what I saw. I saw a man in his underwear, white underwear, with a white T-shirt on, and I thought he had white underwear on his head. But again, I had no brothers, I had 4 sisters. Because it was a white mask with a big open spot for both eyes, like a bar across both eyes. And I screamed, and thank God I was on the Fountain Valley High School track team. I took off running, and only a block away was the Fountain Valley Fire Department. And I knew them because my dad was a quadriplegic. And so we called the fire guys a lot when my dad would fall or my mom couldn't pick him up or anything. They were great. So I banged on the door. They came out. By then he was gone.
Wow.
And he was holding a kitchen knife.
Wow.
In his right hand. Like I saw a glitter and then realized later it was actual a kitchen butcher knife.
Mm-hmm.
So I took off running. They opened the door. He was gone. They helped me pick up my tips, which were now in the middle of the street because they flew out of my pocket as I went running. And so I waited there. I know we called the police. I do remember my mom driving from my house, which was only a block away, but she got in her car and drove me home because I was scared. And so that's what I remember about that night. A couple weeks later, I was walking on that same street to cross the street to go to the high school because where he almost abducted me, there was a huge football field. And so that's where I kind of walked to get to the high school. And lo and behold, he drives by again. In the van.
Same van.
Same van. Same guy. But this time he's not wearing a mask. So I get a really good look at him. And so I know I called the police again. Do I specifically remember it? No. My little sister says, you were so angry at the police. You were like, why didn't you catch him? He's still driving around. So I know I called the police, and then nothing happened. Didn't hear about it. A couple years ago, or maybe 5 years ago, I remember one time Googling, serial killer, or I think I Googled rapist, Fountain Valley, 1979 and 1980. Nothing came up. And then when this happened with Shira, my daughter, I thought, I'm just going to Google again. And this time I think I did serial killer, 1980, Fountain Valley. And up popped Joan Anderson's case. And I looked at the facts of that case, and realized how much that looked like a possible Golden State Killer case. Now remember, this was before they arrested D'Angelo.
Mm-hmm.
So all I had was sketches on the whatever FBI website. So I went onto the FBI website, and that first sketch, which is the only sketch they use now, which is a younger boy-looking sketch, I called the FBI and said, look, this matches the guy who almost abducted me in Fountain Valley in 1979 or 1980, and just want you to know. And they were like, okay, thanks, click. So then I called the Sacramento Sheriff's Department because, again, I'm a lawyer. Like, this is important, right? And I also told the FBI, by the way, the other sketches are wrong. You should just take them down because they're wrong. Right. That's not him. Like, I saw him without the mask. Wasn't him. And then he gets arrested. And he looks today like the guy who I saw that many years ago.
An old, crabby version of...
Just the setting of his eyes and those really bright blue eyes, I will never forget those bright blue eyes.
I was going to say, what stuck out most when you saw him without the mask?
Because
the
of
eyes.
And the hair. That he had wavy, blondish, sandy blonde hair. And it was wavy.
Right.
And a lot of those pictures, he doesn't have wavy hair. They have really straight hair. And when I saw him, he had wavy hair.
Right.
So...
There are so many descriptions, the ones that they try to narrow it down to. I mean, there are even descriptions that are black,
right,
black hair, dark eyes. I think the dark eyes comes from the inside, not that his eyes are dark.
Yeah.
I think when you're, traumatized, you think everyone's eyes are black,
right?
Because that's all you can see. The fact that you had enough wherewithal to, wavy hair. The color of the mask, that color of the mask, he homemade a lot of those. They weren't just ski masks you bought at Big Five Sporting Goods. Yeah. He took, and they're like, it's like he sat at home and, was a cobbler and a seamstress and made his own little creepy ass masks. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what month in the year? Do you remember what year this was?
I do not.
So you don't remember if it was 79 or 80?
Because I worked at Sizzler for 2 years.
But there's no copies of your police reports?
So I called the Fountain Valley Police Department.
Right.
Well, we got a new computer system in 2015, and we threw away everything unless it was a cold case, and it was a murder cold case.
Charming, so helpful.
So everything's gone. I called the Fountain Valley Fire Department. They looked in their logs. They couldn't find it, but they said because I didn't have a physical injury, they might not have logged it that night.
Okay.
And then I forget. I don't know. I called someone else, but I just wanted to prove for myself. But
right.
I remembered it so vividly, and again, that's what I think happens to trauma victims.
Yeah.
Is that trauma you remember? You remember the details, everything about it.
But you try to push it back into.
It's not so much I pushed it. It wasn't relevant. I was busy with my life.
It was what it was, and you move on with your life. Right. I get it. And to me, there are probably so many more cases, close calls that that women could have had with him that we may never know about, only because he was so prolific. Where there's a record of his prolific activity, so I would imagine there's a lot more prolific attacks that didn't get to finish. Yeah. Which I think is one of the. So am I allowed to mention?
Yes.
The 1978 case?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think that was what was so fascinating to me about Patricia Neufeld was that I feel like he got thwarted. It was many of the things that his MO showed up in that case the same way that it could have in Joan Virginia Anderson's. Right. So at any point, was Gerald Parker suspected of Joan Virginia Anderson's?
I think he was on the list of potential suspects, but because they found Evans and they felt like they locked that up.
That's what sadly happens.
Right. and let me tell you how we got to Joan Virginia Anderson, because it kind of pieces it all together. So D'Angelo gets arrested, right, in February?
April.
April.
Yeah. April 24th.
And I decide I'm going to stay up all night again, because these students know I don't sleep very much. I'm going to stay up all night, and I'm just going to research every other possible murderer, serial killer, rapist in Orange County in about 75 to 80. And so I do this whole research, and that's when I come up with
There was
Joan
a
Virginia.
shitload from the late 70s to the early 80s.
Yeah.
I just assumed, living in Kentucky until I've lived in Los Angeles now for 26 years, I assumed Orange County is where you go to get away from serial killers.
Yeah.
I had no idea anyone ever died in Orange County
yeah.
except of natural causes.
Oh, yeah.
Never in my life.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, holy shit, what was going on in the late 70s, early 80s?
Right.
That's insane to
Yeah.
me. The bedroom basher. I mean, they have
Gerald
their own
Parker.
names.
Yeah.
They have their own names.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's amazing to me what happened, and then it seems to have, dissipated.
Right.
But what a crazy hotbed.
I know. And so I had an interesting perspective because I knew where I lived, right? And so I wanted to see, was there anyone else in that kind of proximity? And then I stumbled upon Joan Virginia Anderson, who lived about 6 blocks from my house. And interestingly enough, when I saw the Golden State Killer, James D'Angelo, driving by that morning when I was walking to high school, he was going in the direction of her home.
Wow.
I know, because she lived off of Bouchard and I lived off of Bouchard.
Wow.
About 6 blocks from each other. So
She was killed in 79.
She was killed in
so
79,
it makes
right.
sense that if you worked at Sizzler for a couple of years, that you were right in that
Right.
wheelhouse of
Right.
time.
And
Just
I
happened to be
fix-
walking by.
Right, and I fit the physical description of the women he liked to attack, color-wise and looks-wise and all
Yeah,
that.
he had a thing for brunettes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Patricia Neufeld doesn't fit the stereotype, but I have a theory why that happened at the time. But you absolutely fit the description. There are 2 cases in Northern California that are, one attributed to someone else and one is completely open case that were you.
Yeah.
Young teenage girls,
Yeah.
one walking to a football game and one, I don't know where she was, but he
Yeah.
snatched them both off the street. And I think his MO evolved, and I feel like poor, Beth Snelling,
Yeah.
the first one he tried to take out of her home.
Right.
And then, realizes, well, shit, I had to kill her dad.
Right.
I'm trying to get away with not killing people at this point
Right.
in my wonderful, career as a monster. So he, and he takes some time off. And then, evolves as far as the ransacker and other things. But yeah, you absolutely fit the profile of what he would like and want.
And I think from what we know now about him, that he really liked to stay close to home. I mean, his murders and his rapes are kind of close to where he lived.
At the time.
And then also
But
close
he was also
to...
a goddamn gypsy.
Well,
I mean, he
because
just moved around like...
This is our theory. Our theory is that he visited his family in Southern
Absolutely.
California a lot. So on the
Totally.
way home, he stopped and did a little murder or a little rape
yes.
here and there.
So this is a question for you guys. Does anyone have a theory why LA County has escaped? Or do you feel like there are going to be cases that are going to be known from LA County? Because I find it fucking nuts that it's, Sacramento County, Santa Barbara County, Ventura County, Orange County. There's a real big county of, attractive bitches that he could, get his hands on easily. Why do you think LA County escaped?
Well, I think it's a matter of who he had as somebody to stay with. Like if he had family in LA, he might have, maybe not how close he was to them, whether he visited them
Right.
or not. So that would be interesting to look into, see if he
Now,
has any family.
that makes sense. No, so his second daughter was born in Long Beach.
Right.
So they lived for a year in a rental house in Long Beach. Now, granted, that's pretty close to Orange County. Right. He could, move out from there. But I just think it's so fascinating. I'm like, how are there not cases in LA County attributed to him yet? But that's a very good point. I hadn't thought about, maybe he just didn't have geographically, a place to go at that time. But visiting his family.
Well, because he liked to stalk people.
He took his time.
He took his time. He liked to watch them. I think
For
a
a
lot
long
of the
time.
homes had glass windows,
Yeah.
had some way that he could look in and see what they were doing, what their patterns
Their
were.
habits, absolutely.
We know with Joan Virginia Anderson that her
husband's out of town. Yep.
every Monday through Friday, he's
Yep.
up north. And whether or not D'Angelo knew him from being up north,
Interesting.
or somehow knew that she was alone during the week, but there was construction going on in her house. So it would have been easy to walk in and talk to the contractors and see, when does the husband come home, or when does she come home, or what are her patterns? I mean, he was smart.
Oh, extremely.
Yeah. and calculating.
Now that's interesting you say that. I say extremely, like, automatically. And for any of you who know Detective Paul Holes, who started as a scientist and didn't want to be a cop, wanted to be a scientist, and went to the police academy so he could be a cop to specifically catch this guy, and spent his entire 24 years of his, and it 3 weeks before he retires. That's like the most beautiful story in the world. But he didn't even want to be a cop. And he says very smart. Now, some of the old school detectives were like, he wasn't smart, he was just lucky. So it's interesting. I think he had enough smarts that he could make it work, but I think he was just really fucking lucky too. Really fucking lucky. He lucked out. I think he didn't get you. There are probably I think there's just going to be a lot of other people we don't know about that he didn't get. But his gypsy ways fascinate me. Like the family moves and he visits. And here's why I think Patricia, not just because, as Evan knows when he contacted my friend Pam, the reason I covered Patricia's case in the podcast is because my friend Pam Coronado is a psychic detective. And I know that sounds like, oh, woo-woo. But every law enforcement agency in this United States uses, just to make the men comfortable, think of it as a remote viewer. Don't use the word psychic. Use it as a remote viewer. Every nation in the world uses remote viewers for military reasons. It's typically men who sit and I think that in China they are building this. It's an amazing thing that nobody talks about because it still sounds like fucking voodoo. And it's really not. It's really not. Think of this. Does everyone here have a gut instinct? How do you get through your day? You listen to your gut. That's what it is. It's just developing your gut to maybe. I also think of it as maybe because I love radio and audio. It's like radio waves in the air. Sometimes you're tuning to this station and sometimes you're tuning to this station, but it's out there in the ethers. It's just whether we can tune into the right station to get, hip hop or country or whatever. You can tune into, this event happened and it's in the ethers, and I can pick out some pieces of information. So Pam, who had no idea that this was going to be anything other than a sweet son, Kirk Neufeld, who is just, frustrated with law enforcement and is like, this case, I want to know who killed my mom. And finally he goes to the producers of Sensing Murder and says, will you please allow these psychics to come? And they're like, well, whatever. So, detectives show up and go with each psychic separately. Now, Pam says, he's waiting on the corner. He can see her house was the second one in. He's waiting on the corner, stalking her. Now, as we've talked about, Patricia really doesn't fit his MO. Really doesn't fit his. She's blonde.
I think she fits it because of what we know about Joan Anderson. It's almost identical.
It is very close. Yeah. She didn't look like, and here's why I think he was compressed for time. 2 days before Thanksgiving, he was visiting his brother, his mom and stepdad, and Pam feels he met her at the grocery store.
Okay, which is interesting because we have other women who've come forward to us who were not captured by him. And so we are talking to them and interviewing them because, again, it's just more evidence. And one of them said that she believes she met him at the grocery store because her boyfriend then, now husband, worked at the grocery store. So I do believe that grocery stores are key.
I think so,
Golden
too.
State Killer.
I think he finds who he wants.
Right. So Garden Grove. So what grocery store was near her house? Guys, do you have a map? Does anyone know? Because we were trying to figure out that out for the Long Beach.
I wondered.
Yeah.
Oh, there's somebody in Long Beach. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Oh, my.
We got some more.
Oh, wow.
People are coming out. Which is why we
learn.
Yeah. Huh? Yeah. But, for us, because we're now investigating Patricia Neufeld's case from the ground up.
Right.
We're not redoing. We're starting fresh from every single angle.
Like you don't know anything and just,
And the Garden Grove Police Department and the City of Garden Grove just agreed to work with our team.
Good.
So we heard from the city attorney last week, and we are supposed to be speaking with the Garden Grove detective in charge of the Golden State Killer case, in charge of the Neufeld case.
Great.
And hopefully we're going to get some cooperation and some answers and look at the documents.
The cold case detective.
The cold case detective.
Okay, good.
You know
Because the
her?
original, the second one, I guess, is already retired. Was her name Linda? What?
Oh, yeah, she's retired.
Yeah. So she is the one who, so the way they did Sensing Murders, these two psychics, and to let you know the background, they tested many psychics, really hard tests. And Pam and Lori Campbell, Pam Coronado and Lori Campbell, got within the 90 to 100 percentile of, the tests that were given to them. So they were picked for the show. They didn't know each other. Every time they went to a new location, they had to make them fly in separate planes. I mean, they kept them really separate so they couldn't talk amongst themselves. So Pam had one of the original detectives. He came back, he was already retired, and he was hard of hearing, couldn't hear what she said, was not helpful. Linda, I can't remember her last name, was with Lori Campbell and didn't particularly bond with her, and came over and asked Pam, all right, so what do you see? And they both came up with very close stories of what they felt happened, that he came in through he hopped a fence, came in through a backslider. Right. She was surprised. She was looking out of her kitchen window. The house is different now. The back bedroom where she was found is now a laundry room. The owners have redone the house. Lori said, I think she was strangled, but there's something else. She then later on went to say bludgeoned. But Pam said Pam felt it immediately, left side of her head. She knew immediately. Pam has, she gets headaches and she can figure out where someone was, bludgeoned. The thing that she couldn't figure out was the tool, the implement. And it turns out to be her son's bowling pin from his bowling set, which is another Joseph James D'Angelo. Gerald Parker would bring his own, and let's just be honest, most of them bring their shit. They like their own toys and tools. And he would bring a 2x4, which was, or a mallet, crazy. So Joseph James D'Angelo would figure out something at the house and use it, which is awful.
And Gerald Parker, he's been cooperating with law enforcement. He said all along, I did not do Patricia Neufeld.
It's the worst. They've asked him 3 times, and they bring pictures, and he's like, mine, not mine, mine. It's just, it's heartbreaking, but at least, and what would he have? He has no reason to lie at this point.
Right.
He has 6 life sentences, the 5 women and the 1 unborn child. So he's not going anywhere. He's not going to get out. He would have no reason to lie about who he did kill and who he didn't kill. So it's fascinating to me that 3 times he has denied even any, but said the ones he did. It's fascinating. So, I don't think it's at all Gerald Parker. It would be really fascinating if it were Joseph James D'Angelo.
Right.
So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's no, as far as we know, discernible physical evidence.
So we can't comment on that right now because we're in the middle of the investigation, but I'll just say I'll be very upset if there wasn't physical evidence retained. And this is a cold case. It wasn't solved. I kind of get it with Joan Anderson that they didn't save as much evidence because they had William Lee Evans in custody.
On the hook right away.
But this is a cold case, so there better be boxes and boxes of documents.
Well, documents, the thing that,
DNA.
And I feel like he was thwarted because there was an alarm she had a couple of kids she was babysitting, and there was an alarm for their medicine. And that's, perhaps he had issues performing sexually. Maybe maybe that's why she wasn't raped. But I also feel he also would leave doors open. The front door was open. The mailman left a package and the front door was open. All of these things are very close to, it doesn't mean he did it, but it sure is close to his MO.
Right. Well, he typically did not rape postmortem.
Right.
We have no evidence that he would kill someone and then rape them. And those freaky people do that all the time, or they don't ever do it.
Right.
It's a very weird thing with them.
It is really a line.
We have no evidence that he raped postmortem. So and we know that the crime scene was very chaotic and that there was a huge struggle. And at this point in time, a possible theory is that he had to kill her. She was screaming, he couldn't get her bound like he did with the other victims. Quickly, and so she was murdered before he raped her.
Right.
And then after that, he left, and
left in more of a hurry than he typically would, and didn't stay and make a turkey sandwich or whatever and pop a beer open. Yeah, exactly. A big yeah, that would be awesome. Some pasta,
which just shows his incredible chutzpah that he, murders somebody and then goes into the kitchen and starts making a meal.
Yeah, and there's two. Typically this was after when he was encountering families where there's a wife and a husband and kids. Right. He would. It typically wasn't just a single female where he would do a lot of cooking. It would be the whole families where he would leave teeth marks in the cheese and also would take things from a home and take it to a neighbor's home and leave it on the porch. The jar of cherries.
Right.
That was like.
Yeah. And with the Joan Anderson case, we found that
he stayed.
He stayed, he cooked, he drank alcohol from a ceramic, a collector's whiskey can upstairs. And it was interesting because there's another case, another Golden State Killer case, where he left a collector's rum can on someone's door or by their door. And I just wonder, could that have been from Joan Anderson's house?
Interesting.
At some point in time, law enforcement needs to work together.
I wonder if he would transport things from one part of the state to the other.
Well, he kept a lot of these in his home.
A lot of the trophies?
A lot of the trophies, yeah.
Yeah, I still have people who want to know where the entire set of china is. Right. Entire Noritake china. And this was what he was using, a bike. So he put it in his little bike basket. I mean, it's a set of china in a protective case with something between each piece of china. Beautiful, beautiful china. Where did that go? Did he give that to his wife as an anniversary present? But the MO when you're talking about, we covered a case last week, the bike path rapist from upstate New York and Buffalo. His first victim that was known to be he had many when he was younger. He strangled her before he could rape her, so he didn't rape her.
Right. And so that's why it makes sense.
Yep.
And from what we've heard, and again we're kind of in the beginning of this, is that the struggle was pretty intense. So
that's fascinating because Pam said she didn't struggle at all.
Yeah. No, according to
wow.
What we found out.
Pam said the thing that bothered her most about this case is she felt Patricia didn't fight back. She just kept saying, why? Why are you doing this? Why? But that's so fascinating. She'll be fascinated to learn that there was a struggle.
Yeah. We do believe that, we probably can take 10 cases. We've got one. We just finished Joan Anderson. Now we have this one, and I'm hoping we get it solved within a year. Our goal is to gather enough evidence and information so that we can give that to the district attorney so that they can file charges against either James D'Angelo or one of the other suspects we're looking at, because we are looking at other suspects.
Awesome. Okay. Fascinating.
We have to be careful because...
No, I understand.
As I tell my students, I have a wife who insists that her ex-husband is a murderer. And I think a lot of ex-wives feel that way about their ex-husbands, But we have to take it seriously, and we got some wacky text. Did anyone look into that? I don't even know. Does he look like legitimate? We have to first make sure that they're legitimate people when they reach out to us. Because they might not be real.
Yeah,
right.
According to him, he's been spreading his story to different law enforcement agencies across over the years, and nobody has gotten back to him. And so maybe there's something to it, but I'll continue looking into that.
Yeah.
So he texted you with information about a case or cases?
Neufeld case. A Golden State Killer case.
Oh, okay.
He had contact supposedly with the Golden State Killer, and that he gave him an address for one of his victims, and he remembers that it might have said he lost the note or destroyed it a few years ago, but he thinks it might have said Garden Grove on it or something like that. So
fascinating.
And I still understand why he had the address. So it's like,
yeah.
It'll be interesting to know his connection to Joseph James D'Angelo, since he wasn't really known for making a lot of friends.
Right.
And having a lot of contact with anything other than his family.
And again, we have to be careful about the information we bring in, because when we give it to law enforcement, we have to substantiate everything we give.
Absolutely. We've already done an amazing job with the Joan Virginia Anderson case. That's amazing.
Well, yeah.
That you got Tony Rackauckas to even that's amazing.
So, the Orange County District Attorney has reopened the case. They assigned it to their Innocence Project Conviction Review Unit, and the state of California gave them a $250,000 grant to work on it.
That's phenomenal.
And that's what they need. They need resources.
Of course.
Because DNA tests are expensive.
Yeah, and take time. And
So
that's one of the things in my podcast I ask people to do. If they have, an extra couple of bucks they want to donate it to the organization that tests, backlogged rape kits. And all of this information, my libertarian husband, producer Mark, and I have, heated debates every night, with his not quite bleeding heart liberal wife, sort of. And I'm like, if you don't fuck up, why does it matter? Take all my I don't care. Take any, swab everything I got. I don't give a shit. I haven't murdered anyone. And he's like, no. So, I don't.
You never know. You might have a cousin who committed serial murder.
Yeah, exactly. Your fourth cousin. Yeah. It could be Joseph James D'Angelo. Yeah. It's very fascinating. He's like, keeping
from
his
a
mouth
legal
shut.
standpoint, that really fascinates me because they got the information regarding his genealogy without a search warrant, they just got it.
Well,
and
that's one of the things I love is that Paul Holes, talked to, now he can release her name. She wanted to be private, but Barbara Bentner, who, is like Miss America to me. She's amazeballs, and said, here's what you do. Put a fake name. Put his, you have his DNA. As Paul Holes says so eloquently, he left his DNA all up and down California. That's, he literally couldn't have. I love one of the questions in the San Francisco Chronicle. People wrote in and were like, so did he ever wear a condom? And Paul Holes is like, not once. Not once. He left everything everywhere. Yeah. So take that, sample and make it John Smith, to come up with the name. And he would check it often and then was like, wait a minute, there's a hit in this crazy little website that's only got 900,000, a public site, 900,000, Ancestry.com, 23 million people. It's amazing. It's just, when it's your time, it's your time. So I do have a question. If you can't answer it, let me know. Is there biological evidence in Joan Virginia Anderson's case?
We don't know that. The DA knows that.
Okay.
So let's say that now the district attorney has a Joan Virginia Anderson case, and they're reopening the case or opening the file. They're looking both at William Lee Evans' conviction to see whether or not that was legitimate conviction. And then they're also looking at whether or not the Golden State Killer is responsible for Joan's murder. If what happens is that there is no DNA evidence and the district attorney says, you know what, we just have no way of proving it was a Golden State Killer, then we may file a Supreme Court brief.
Right.
To clear Evans' name, because that's our client, is Evans' daughter.
Okay.
And her mom. In fact, when we called her mom in Mississippi and told her,
I love this story.
By the way, we're looking into and reopening your husband's case, she said, I've been waiting 30 years for this phone call.
And I know he's innocent.
She said, I've always known he was innocent.
That's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So I wonder, I don't know all of the details of his conviction, but it just was one of those cases where they focused on him and that's just it?
I guess they probably focused on a bunch of different people because they didn't arrest him for 17 months. So he was a contractor.
Pasadena, Texas.
He went back to Texas with his wife and 2 kids, which is, just so sad because he was ripped out of his home in the middle of the night, taken back to California, sat in Orange County jail for 5 years. The charges against him for murder were based upon the hypnotized testimony of 2 70-year-old neighbors who said, I know that his truck was parked on the block. And on the hypnotized testimony of his friend, Randy Weiner, that he confessed. So in 1985,
that person was a friend, wasn't there like a jailhouse snitch or something?
Okay, well, that comes a little later.
Okay, sorry.
So, no, this is like they arrest him because they hypnotize people. It's just such a joke that we're here today.
Seems perfect.
Yeah.
That seems like a perfect system.
California justice. Yeah. So then the California Supreme Court rightly said, you can't hypnotize people and use that in evidence. That's not competent. And oh, by the way, not only are we going to say that, we're going to make it retroactive. So anyone who was prosecuted, arrested for hypnotized testimony, let them go.
So he was ready to...
He had his bags packed. His wife and daughter flew from Mississippi to California to pick him up. or from Texas at that time, they were in Texas, to pick him up. And he gets there, and a jailhouse informant, lo and behold, made his way into William Lee Evans' cell. And this informant, James Cockrum, is known for testifying against a lot of murder suspects. In fact, I think he testified against 6 in a few months. And he claimed that Lee Evans confessed to him. And that was it. So the prosecutor met with him, his attorneys met with him, and he agreed to confess to the crime, plea.
Right, accept the plea deal.
Because they told him you'd have 5
That's
years.
right, you get
You've
out.
already served 5 more years, you'll be out. And of course, he died in prison in 2013 for a crime he never, ever committed.
Wow.
And
those are the ones that break your heart. That's why what you're doing here is so amazing and important. And
so that's why we're not done. So if the DA drops the ball, not that they will, but if they happen to drop the ball, we're going to pick it up and we're going to run with it and we're going to file a Supreme Court brief. Because legally, morally, ethically, we have a duty to find him innocent and have him declared innocent. And whether or not the Golden State Killer is responsible for that, that's up to the DA to worry about.
yeah, it's not such a great thing posthumously, but hopefully his family would get some little modicum of
Oh, yeah.
of
He
relief.
has a grandson, and his daughter said, my son has always believed his grandfather was a murderer.
Oh,
And to be able to clear his name would be huge.
you know, the young man who spent 18 months, I think, in jail because he confessed to killing Janelle Cruz, and then it was like he had, a lot of people end up confessing because they either have a mental issue and they want to take, like a savior thing, or they are just beaten down with, police officers questioning them for 10 hours with even, my husband's like, no matter what happens, just immediately ask for an attorney. And I'm like, but I haven't done anything. He's like, doesn't matter. You just ask, you walk in the door, they take your fingerprints and you go, I will say nothing else.
Right.
So, that's just heartbreaking, but that's the way the world works.
Right.
But
But not everyone's educated, or like we have 2 17 and 18-year-old kids who were prosecuted when they were that age. How do they know to ask for an attorney?
They don't. They want depending on who they are, their personalities, they want to please. And they're even told if you just say you did it, you can go home. And that is never going to happen. If you say you did anything, you're never going to get to go home.
Yeah.
So that's,
So I want to ask you a couple questions. I've heard some rumors, and you might know, that James D'Angelo is admitting to the rapes, but not to the murders.
I have heard zero, that he has said absolutely nothing.
Yeah. We talked to Paul Holes, and Paul Holes said he's not talking. But I heard that just in the last couple of weeks, he's been admitting to rapes.
Because they have the statute of limitations?
Right.
I got to be honest with you. I think if he ever says anything, it will be years from now. And I feel like he's the personality type that will not say anything, won't admit to anything, there's another, he's a fascinating creature in that, it's awful to say fascinating, but I can't help it. He's a fascinating creature because of his, whatever's going on in his mind, and because of his prolific attacks in every way, shape, and form, whether it's stealing, $10 earrings or raping and murdering, someone. It's terrible. All of it is terrible, but how he progressed. But this guy in Colorado, Scott Kimball, who is likes to brag and talk and say I'm the smartest guy in the room, and say, oh, they're investigating me for the Golden State Killer cases, and he couldn't ever possibly do that. But he would take police out on long walks, and you know what Colorado's like.
Right.
It's a lot of, stuff that you can't, dig into and brush, and he would be like, okay, there's one, Merry Christmas. But there were 3 more that he wouldn't tell you about. So I don't feel Joseph James D'Angelo is going to talk. I think he's such an asshole. This is all he's got left, and he needs to keep it for himself.
Now, one of the things that we're looking into is proximity to the murders and where D'Angelo was in the 70s and 80s. Have you
That's a great mystery.
Have you been following any leads with regard to where his wife was working? Because we picked up some information that she might have been working with a law firm in Orange County.
Oh, I had not heard Orange County. Her law, I know when her law license has been active. I don't know if she ever practiced or worked anywhere in LA County, but her law license was active when their second daughter was born in Long Beach. So that would be, I had no idea about, I thought the Orange County connection would be the family. Had no idea it would be Sharon.
Yeah, so there was a women's law clinic that she had worked at. She didn't work full-time there. It sounded like she came,
Irony,
Yeah.
a women's law clinic. Wow,
She was
Sharon.
a woman's advocate attorney.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know
Great,
how
Sharon.
you don't know. Like, you're doing your husband's laundry, and he comes home, and he's got blood splatters on his white shirt. I mean, either that or he was burning all his clothes before he came in. I mean, how do you not come home covered in blood? And
I want to know how they had 3 kids.
And are those kids normal?
One's a doctor, they're, probably as normal as one can be in that situation. But for all, from all reports, their marriage was pretty distant from minute one. I mean, she's a divorce attorney and they've been separated since 1991.
Right.
Why don't you divorce your own husband?
And what was the cause of the separation? Did she find something? Because he kept all these trinkets.
How do you know that? You must have information on that. Okay, because they must have found stuff. I mean, I saw the boxes that were taken out of his house, but I've heard
You
nothing.
can actually look online, just so you know, because there's photos of what they found.
There's photos of what was taken and some things that were found but I don't like photos of the Noritake china, photos of $10 earrings.
We do need to find that china.
Yeah, totally. A whole set of china. When you're on a bike. That's the part. I'm sorry.
So
I just can't even.
Our theory is that the bike was just a way to get to his car so no one knew where his car was. Because he could take the bike in alleys and ditches, but then he could get to where his car was. But he ultimately went into a car.
So it's interesting that you, when your 17-year-old self was confronted by someone in a van, because for most of the descriptions, a van wasn't really used. So he could have had family members' van.
Well, and another thing is that he used a lot of cars.
Yep,
and we
sure
still
did.
don't understand how he used so many cars and why he changes cars, whether he
Police
was
depot.
hot wiring them. But the police have those little, they were given those little things to get into a car. And if you know how to hot wire a car, you get a car really fast. But he did say I think 2 or 3 victims. Do you guys remember? He asked them, "Do you remember? Don't talk about my van. Don't tell anyone about my van. I got to go find out where my van is parked and things like that." So,
but he also
was some
said he
discussion
was
about
living with
van.
a band like Chris Farley style down by the river, living in his van down by the river. It's like I think he said a lot of shit that
to confuse people and get them off. Yeah.
Exactly. A van was never really brought up as far as
But there's so many. I mean, because we looked through all the cars he's used.
Insane amount of cars. I mean, there's also the white German Shepherd with 3 toes. It's like that would be something pretty easy to track down. He beat some dogs to death and left some dogs alive. Did he have breeds he liked better than others?
Right.
Did he take a German Shepherd with 3 toes, especially in Santa Barbara and Ventura, it was like several people said we saw this same guy walking a dog, which would be such a great cover. I'm not giving anyone ideas, but no one's going to look at you if you're walking your dog, whether you got a knife or not. Nobody's going to be looking at you. That's fascinating. I would love to know the stuff that he kept. So do you mind telling us about the project, how it got started, how you got these great students involved, how you started teaching here?
Well, about 6 or 7 years ago, I had an ex-LAPD officer show up at my house to teach my daughter how to drive, because I did not want to do it. And he ran a driving school in Laguna Beach. And he said, "Oh, you're a lawyer. I've got this case. These 2 young boys were sentenced to 11 consecutive life sentences." And I agreed to look at the file, and then I went to the prison and I cross-examined Juan Rayford for about 2 hours until I realized he's telling the truth. And he was not a shooter. He did not have a gun that night, but because there were 11 people in the house, the prosecutor used a kill zone theory and prosecuted each of these boys for 11 consecutive life sentences. and they are still in prison today. It's been, I think, 15 years. Some of you guys have worked on the case for how many years? 4 years? 3, 4 years? I'm trying to think. Somebody, yeah, I've been working on with UC Irvine Law School and started an Innocence project on my own after meeting the woman who runs Innocence Matters and Lori Levinson and talking to Barry Scheck. Just decided to open up my own. And so we've got those 2 cases. The California Supreme Court agrees with us that they are probably innocent. And we have 2 writs of habeas corpus that have been granted. And we're just awaiting a hearing. We've done clemency petitions for the Obama administration. And then we had the Joan Virginia Anderson case, and now this case. I'm trying to think, what else do we have? I feel like we have more. I feel like we're exhausted. We should have more. But really, I'm so blessed because these students from UC Irvine give up a lot of their free time and their lunch breaks to help out. And they mean a lot to the project. They mean a lot to me. And they're really smart. They're so much smarter than me. So it's just great to have them on the team. But we have a lot of work to do because now we have the confidence of the Neufeld family who has agreed to allow us to represent them and investigate this case. And we'll be interviewing the sons this week. And then we have the confidence of the city of Garden Grove and the Garden Grove Police Department. So we are up and running. So as I like to say, what's my motto? Someone needs to take the microphone if you're going to say my motto. You know my motto, right? Oh, come on. I got to get you guys T-shirts so you memorize it.
Justice is mandatory, sleep is optional.
Yes!
Ah. I thought it was don't rape and kill people.
Oh, yeah, that too.
That's mine.
That's a given.
Mine. Thank you all so much. This has been so fascinating. I'm really fascinated. And I feel I'm going to sleep a lot better knowing you guys are on the case.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
I want to say thank you so much to the fantastic students at the University of California, Irvine School of Law, the wonderful students who volunteer their time, their energy, their effort, their brilliance, to the Innocence Rights Orange County and Ms. Annee, Donna for allowing us to observe what they do, discuss the case and potentially other cases. And if you have any questions, have any information for the Innocence Rights Project or Ms. Donna, feel free to contact her at delladonnalaw@cox.net. That's DELLADONNALAW all together at cox.net. Or you can always send us an email and we can get it to her at jttipsters@gmail.com or at our hotline at 832-TIP-STER. We would love to hear from you. I know Ms. Donna would be appreciative of any information. Perhaps you lived in the area, you know something, you saw something. There are no small details. All of the details are important here. We want to get Patricia Neufeld's case solved and bring her family whatever peace we can. And thank you for listening, and more cowbell.
And remember, if you've got a tip for Melissa, give her a call at 832-TIP-STER. That's 832-847-7837. Or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. And remember to rate and review the podcast. See you next time. Melissa, want a cookie?